Hello. Breakfast of Champions is one of the many texts that is under the literary genre of postmodernism. It was written in 1973 by Kurt Vonnegut. In this presentation, I will focus on the prologue and the first chapter of the book, and I will touch on the topics of the narrator, the characters, and furthermore, I will explain and show some of the postmodern characteristics in this text and explain the effect that the drawings has on the text and on the reader and stuff like that. Endwise, I will compare Breakfast of Champions with Maus, another postmodern text. So, the narrator in Breakfast of Champions is a third person narrator who is not bound by time. The narrator is its own individual who tells a story about these two main characters. We, as the readers, can't hear the characters' thoughts, but the narrator knows things about them which a bound narrator would not know. For example, in this quote, Dwayne Hoover was on the brink of going insane, from page 1, line 7. A Persian bound narrator would not know the fact that one of the characters was on the brink of going insane, but an all knowing narrator would know this, and therefore he is that. But as you read the extract, it becomes clear that the narrator, who most likely is the author of the book, is a bit unreliable because of his bias against America. If they studied their paper money for clues as to what their country was all about, they found among a lot of Baroque trash a picture from page 2, line 21 to 22. So here, for instance, the narrator calls it paper money and uses negative words to describe this money, such as trash. He also, throughout this first chapter, calls Columbus a pirate and the torch that the Statue of Liberty stands with an ice cream cone on fire. That's kind of negative, and therefore he has a bias against the US. In chapter 1, two characters, not included the narrator, are introduced: Dwayne Hoover and Killigan Trout. In the first line of the chapter, they are described as old, white, skinny, and lonesome. This is actually the only thing that we hear that they have directly in common, and this is actually also the only thing we hear about their appearances. Just so you have the quote. This is a tale of a meeting of two lonesome, skinny, fairly old white men. Page 1, line 1. But Dwayne Hoover is also a Pontiac car dealer who is on the brink, as I said before, of going insane, just waiting for the last straw. And for him, it's actually Killigan Trout's novel, where he says that the reader is the only human living amongst robots. And a quote for that is, everybody else was a fully automatic machine whose purpose was to simulate Dwayne. Dwayne was a new type of creature being tested by the only Dwayne Hoover had free will. Trout did not expect to be believed. It's from page 5, line 20 to 25. So, the novel, makes Hoover sick, and he has to be put into a mental institution because of this, actually. In some way, or at least I think that Hoover, because of this, is a bit gullible. This affects Killigan Trout a lot because he did not think that his book could do something evil, and it was never his intention to do something evil with his books. And this instance, that that Hoover goes insane, actually changed Trout a lot, and he dedicates his life to find causes and cures for this disease, or for diseases in all matters, actually. And Trout dies in 1981, 20 years after his book made Hoover sick, and he has by then gone from a shadow to a recognized artist and scientist. And just to end this with a quote that's to, that says this is that the American Academy of Arts and Science caused a monument to be erected over his ashes. Page 6, line 5 to 6. Like I said in the introduction, This is a postmodern text, and therefore it follows some of the postmodern characteristics, such as intertextuality, hyperreality, and metafiction. Intertextuality is seen in the prologue when he refers to Romeo and Juliet. First of all, the person reading the text has to know that the text the author refers to, has to know it. If he don't, or if they don't, the intertextuality is just lost. And the effect of intertextuality is that it creates a bond between two texts. This reference to Romeo and Juliet is a fairly direct way of using intertextuality, and therefore most reader would understand it or would see it. So there's also hyperreality in the prologue. The author tells the reader that he uses hyperreality a lot in the prologue, but we can also see it in chapter 1. For example, it could be seen in the quote I used earlier. Everybody else was a fully automatic machine whose purpose was to simulate Dwayne. Dwayne was a new type of creature being tested by the only Dwayne Hoover had free will. Trout did not expect to be believed. And this is like last time from page 5, line 20 to 25. So here it's hard to distinguish reality from fiction. Not for the reader, but actually for one of the characters. So what's real and what's fiction blends together and makes the reader aware that not all is as it might seem in this text or in Breakfast of Champions. The story also has, actually, just to jump to something new, a lot of metafiction, which is when the author speaks directly to the reader. In this extract, or in chapter 1, and actually also in the prologue, it is mostly used through drawings, which is the author's way of giving the reader the exact picture that he wants to. So, this image is on the American dollar bill actually. The effect of using drawings such as this is that the reader gets a better idea of the item described in the text. It also adds to the context of the story the author is telling. But furthermore, it gives the reader the exact image that the author wants the reader to have in mind when reading the text. So therefore it minimizes the reader's involvement and encouragement to analyze and interpret the text, because the author has visualized his descriptions for the reader and not left it for the reader himself or herself to make this picture. So just to end this analysis of Breakfast of Champions, I would like to make a comparison. Yeah, so there's actually a lot of different texts that you could compare Breakfast of Champions to, but I think that Maus, the comic, is a really good comparison actually. Maus is from 1996, and Maus is the tale of a young mouse whom is retelling his father's time as a Jew under the Second World War and his time in and out of concentration camps. Actually, just his time under the Second World War. Just as Breakfast of Champions, Maus is a postmodern text and therefore, of course, used some of the postmodern characteristics, such as metafiction. Like I said before, this is when the author stops to say something of importance, or when it also does this in the Maus, the comic goes back and forth in time to the father's time or the present, where they are talking, and actually also sometimes the author is talking directly to the reader. So, like I said, both texts contain drawings. The comic, of course, is completely done in drawings, but it actually has the same effect as the drawings in Breakfast of Champions. And in some way, by visualizing the descriptions for the reader, they have like jumped over the step where the reader forms an internal picture of what is described, and therefore the author has instead just like made this picture for the reader. So this was my analysis of Breakfast of Champions. Well, bye.